in a moment, we're going to have an opportunity to talk with one of our electeds from a place where maybe 15 years ago you would not have gotten to say DuPage County Democrat, but now we can. Congressperson Bill Foster of the 11th Democrat. Welcome to WCPT, the Joan Esposito Show. As you likely know by now, I'm Turi Ryder in for Joan. I'm so glad you could be with us, and there's so much to talk about. And may I also thank you for being a scientist in Washington. We need you more than ever now.
Yeah, well, I feel a little bit lonely.
Well, you got Sean Casten. Sean Casten, also a man of science. I door knocked for him.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he is a quality member.
We need to just flood the zone
and you know who
with
else?
science.
You know who else?
Who else?
Since you mentioned DuPage turning blue, the leader in that is returning to Congress. Where Melissa Bean was my role model when I first ran. She was the first one who ever won one of the collar counties as a Democrat. And she is now, and she and I were both defeated in the Tea Party wave election in 2010 and had long discussions about, okay, should we go back and try to return? And at the time she had young kids and said, okay, no, I can't do it. And she went off, had a successful career. And then when Raja decided to go for Senate, the seat that she had represented was open again. And she said, you know what, there's work to be done.
There certainly is.
But she was really one of the heroes.
Work to be done.
And she was the tip of the spear on turning the DuPage County and really the suburbs blue. And
it's a really different world. As I was just saying to David Hochberg last hour, you couldn't find a Democrat between Evanston and Highland Park when I grew up, and it's very different now. And I think one of the little ironies is that the Democrats used to be considered the working class party. And the horrifying truth is it still should be, because that's who looks out for people who work for a living. And yet somehow the elites, quote, close quote, the college educated, even those who used to vote Republican, are now moving over because this war on science and war on logic and war on ethics and war, it's unconscionable.
And war on small businesses. You know, I was just over at the Bolingbrook Chamber of Commerce, right? Normally, historically, chambers of commerce skew heavily Republican.
True.
But these are, you know, they've looked at the effect of Trump's policies on things they care about, and they are not fans.
What were the things that they had to say to you? This is really interesting. What were some of the private asides that you heard, or the questions that you got from people who formerly wouldn't have even thought twice about supporting a Democrat or the positions in our platforms?
Well, one of the big things that we ended up talking about was there were a lot of hotel operators there. And they have to live in a world where all of these AI product selectors, you know, Expedia, and I don't want to name all of them, but even if you just Google, I want to go have a trip somewhere, what you do is you end up getting a report from an AI. That says, here are all the aspects of it. So someone is paying for that AI to steer you into some hotel that is paying them money, you know, through some complicated agreement. And this, I think, is going to be one of the big battles of the coming decade, is who gets to control that AI that is your personal assistant.
Well,
because you certainly, you don't want your AI doctor taking payments under the table from a drug company to steer you into crappy, overpriced drugs.
That's probably not a good example, because for a long time they did.
Well, it's going to come back in disguise if it's some neural network program.
The pharmaceutical industry has made some trouble for itself. So let's maybe pick a better example, if I could suggest.
We have to protect make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Everywhere you turn around.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And to your point about not getting people. There are a group of us, friends of mine, who will pretty much do whatever we can to get a human being on the other end of the line to help us with these tasks that we are really being shoved. We are having AI shoved at us. I had to go into my computer and turn off just the basic help me write function. It took 3 tries before my computer went, oh, all right, I'll let you write your own email. But you don't even know. And Google was in trouble for this years ago for putting their own best interests up in searches, and they didn't always have to say what was sponsored clearly and succinctly. So you didn't always know. And you would be better positioned to talk about this. Can you remember how it happened that we had to really be told when content was sponsored in a search? I remember there was a process, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, the first time you ever saw Google, it was this wonderful, clean page.
Yes.
With 4 clear, wonderfully useful links.
Yes.
And they had this model, don't be evil.
Yes.
And then they realized somehow we're going to have to pay for all this stuff.
Being
and
evil
they said, who will pay us?
Yes.
And so, and this is not just Google. They're just following their financial incentives.
Yes.
If someone's going to pay them money to list this hotel above that hotel, they're going to at some point accept that money. And, they did some right now, the sponsored search. It used to be if you Googled stuff, you get 1 or 2 sponsored first links. All right, and they would mark it. But now you've got to scroll 3 times to get past all the sponsored, content.
Yeah.
And I think that the technical term for this is enshittification. I don't know if that just can be believed or not.
Well, you're a congressman, so I don't know if we get to enslimification, we will call it from here on out.
If you go, there are hilarious YouTube videos out there by describing how that has happened in many, many industries. It's not just search, and it's medical advice.
Let me pause you because this is one of the reasons that I'm so glad that you are serving in Washington, because you can succinctly explain to people why we want medical research, why we want scientific research, because the Republicans will always find the most outrageous example of an animal that needs to be protected. I had a guy on my Sunday show, and he was loath to talk about the species that were unique to Big Bend National Park because they were so small and had some cute little names. And he knows what will happen, which is the Republicans will say, you're going to pay $60 bazillion in order to protect a snail. That is, and so we need people like you to stand up and say, excuse me, this particular hermit crab is where we are getting this particular chemical that is used in this particular medical procedure or is being researched because it has a particular property that might conceivably save your parent from a life of Alzheimer's. So I
think everyone knows about, the Ozempics and the GLP-1s that are transforming so many people's lives. Mm-hmm. All right. And these things were discovered. The actual chemical was discovered by someone studying, I think it was lizard guts and lizard digestion process. Exactly the sort of thing that would have been ridiculed by Republicans for a long time, and not just Republicans. It used to be a guy called Bill Proxmire was in the Senate.
Oh, God bless William Proxmire. He was amazing.
He was a very good senator, but he also ran something called the Golden Fleece, where he would make fun of these things.
Yes, that's true.
And so that actually there is an organization that invites me to speak in Washington every year, which is the Golden Goose Awards. And when these are scientific projects that sound silly and change the world for the better. And it's a great organization.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because when people fund research, the thing about it is they're perfectly willing to go to Vegas and put money on a gamble and hope that they will be the winner. And scientific research is not all gambling, but there's an element of that to it, that if you pile up the knowledge at some point, some piece will be worth something very important to people or the planet or the air or the water, the planet that we all live on, or other people on the planet. So I'm rambling a little, but yes, we don't know what's connected to the other end of the thread that we're pulling out of the sweater right now. And
that's exactly right. Well, and that's why, where part of my job is to go and educate the public about the benefits of federally funded science. We're actually, this coming Saturday, we're actually having an event on this that talks about, over the 250 years of America, how we have come to dominate world science. and frankly, the dangers of walking away from that.
Yes.
And we have guests from Argonne National Laboratory that I represent. And so, just since I'm on the radio here, it's this Saturday.
I got to wait. Let me promote your event for you. May I? May I do you that honor?
Sure.
Because it's always better if someone else toots your horn.
Go for it.
It is going to be at the Prisco Community Center, and our guest, Congressman Foster, will be there celebrating America 250 Science and Innovation. It's a discussion recognizing the discoveries, tech advances, and the spirit of innovation that have shaped America's history for the last 250 years. Now, there is an anniversary, a 250th anniversary event worth attending. Go stuff your NASCAR and your country drinking festival. And I love country music as much as the next person. And your fireworks show and your trampling of what used to be the White House, the People's House's lawn. Go see what your tax dollars are actually really doing. And is it kid friendly? Can you tell me?
Yeah, I think so. They're going to be answering questions, and it'll be, certainly, high school, junior high school kids.
Cool. So if you've got a kid with a science, math, in a research brain, bring that kid. Is there a charge to go to this? That it does not say.
No.
Good.
No.
Good. You want to know what to do with your kid. That's the thing you can do with your kid. And if it's unpleasantly hot and stormy this weekend, which I hear that it may be, I'll bet you it has air conditioning, right?
Yes, it does.
There, see that? Don't negate and that's science too, by the way. And we've cleaned up our Freon output, and that's good for the world too. Let's talk a little bit about a scary use of tech and NVIDIA chips. We've all heard about NVIDIA. Some of us bought stock in NVIDIA, did very well. And you pointed out before the show that some consumer-grade NVIDIA chips have ended up in a Russian drone that is doing some horrific things. Do you wish to discuss?
Oh, I unfortunately have to. I think it was almost probably 8 years ago that I went up to the microphone in an internal meeting of the Democratic caucus and said, look, this business of AI-enabled warfare is coming, that AI in general is coming for our economy. And people said, oh, that's cute. That's interesting science fiction, Bill. But, I first programmed neural networks back in the 1990s at Fermi National Accelerator Lab, where I worked for 23 years. And right then, you could tell there was promise in the technology, but it wasn't ready. Computers simply weren't fast enough to do it usefully. And it was really the federal government research that kept the flame alive in neural networks that they're at the core of why AI is changing the world. And if that had happened without that federally funded research to keep the flame alive, and it wasn't just the U.S. federal government. It was also the Canadian federal government. Some of the biggest breakthroughs, actually, which Trump never mentions when he's declaring war on Canada, actually some of the biggest breakthroughs came out of Canada.
Well, yes, that's where insulin came from, most people know. And now, until Trump blows it up, we still have a water research deal with Canada, which is very much coming into play as concerns the water needs of AI centers. It's not just the American Great Lakes. We share those. That's a border. And Canadians and Americans with scientific institutions are working together to really ascertain what will be the environmental impact of pulling the kind of water out of the Great Lakes that it looks like we're going to need for AI centers as they're currently constructed. Sorry?
Yeah. If you do it right, you can avoid a big water draw. You just simply have to recycle the water instead of just And so I think that part of it, the electric use is a huge problem. And the other thing they don't mention is all these AI centers are saying, "Oh, don't worry, we'll bring our own electric power generators." And say, "Okay, what are you going to do to power that?" "Oh, we're going to burn natural gas and dump more CO2 in the atmosphere."
Well, they're noisy. They're noisy, and they blow off smoke, and it takes a huge number of them, and they will consume huge amounts. And some of of these counties
they
where
will drive up the price.
Right.
They will drive up the price of natural gas.
Right.
They say, oh, don't worry, we won't drive up the price of electricity because we'll bring our own electricity, but they never make that promise for not driving up the price of natural gas for heating.
Let's talk a little bit about, in fact, can you hold on a second? Because I got a few more minutes worth of questions that I have to ask you. And in a moment, I want to ask you about how AI is possibly missing an opportunity to be powered by green energy and what you think of that. And we still haven't talked about the AI and the drones. So all that coming up. It's Joan Esposito's show. I am Turi, usually here on Sundays at 2. In for Joan, live, local, and progressive. It's 421.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
We got this on the text. We're getting a lot of texts, and I thank you. I love the texts because I could just kind of sneak those in. And one of them is for you, Congressperson. Where, again, is this event? Karen in Naperville wants to know. Let's just go over that again. The event America 250, celebrating science and innovation, is August 29th, 10:30 to noon at the Prisco Community Center. So you can look that up, Karen in Naperville, and you can take your science-minded friends and progeny with you to that event. Congressman
Foster. You can also just go to foster.house.gov.
Oh, there you go.
I think /events, and that will get you the information. We're also having a telephone town hall if someone has questions for me.
Oh.
And that is this Monday the 31st.
Okay. All of these things are happening. And if I don't know if Joan has a place where we can put this information up, but I'll check into it so that we can also let people know. So to finish up with these AI centers that seem to be the boogeyman lately, Donald Trump has had a war on wind power and solar power and money that we'd already spent to build this. And the story is that he didn't like the way that the wind machines looked off the coast of Scotland while he was playing golf. And so he just put the kibosh on the whole thing. I'm not sure. That may be apocryphal, but he's certainly canceled checks we've already written and made us spend money needlessly and wasted millions and millions of dollars. But what hope would there be for running an AI with good batteries on wind and or solar or some combination thereof? How likely possibly could that be done?
It actually works. There are examples of it. And the simplest way to set it up is to set up a large array of solar cells out in the middle of a desert where no one lives. And, if you've ever flown over the United States, there's lots of unoccupied territory where people won't be angry if you cover them with solar cells and set up a data center. The problem is the Trump administration is busy jamming these data centers down everyone's throat. Every communities that do not want them, they're trying to pass laws that say, well, you don't have any right to stop them. And it's one of the big fights that we're having in Congress, where the Republicans are siding with the interests that want to really
isn't it just a little ironic that he doesn't like a wind farm off the coast of his golf course? How do you suppose he'd like an AI center in next to Mar-a-Lago? How do you suppose he'd like that?
Yeah.
Not bloody much.
What this is about.
Not much.
What this is about, frankly, this is Donald Trump delivering on his promise to all the fossil fuel industry. He sort of famously during his campaign, he said, "Look, you guys have to give me $1 billion, and it'll be really worth your time."
He did. He said that to them.
He said that, and they gave him a lot of money, and now he's delivering that. And so how do you deliver the money to the oil and gas companies? Well, you cut off their competition, and then you force the new markets to use the fossil fuels, which is exactly what he is doing. He is delivering on that campaign promise. Now, he also got elected on a campaign promise to cut energy prices in half.
Yeah.
That was his closing argument.
That was a good one.
And he repeated again and again, and there's all these videos out there of him saying, in the first year in office, I'm going to cut your electric bill in half. I'm going to cut your gasoline cost in half.
You almost don't even have to pay your political consultant this next election because it's just too easy to write those ads. It's just too easy. I want to circle back to a text here that we just got. Somebody not far from I understand that your district kind of wiggles and waggles a little bit, and I don't know how close close you are to DeKalb and NIU, but one of our listeners would like to know, speaking of open land, there's nothing but cornfields southwest, north of DeKalb and NIU. What would be the chances of putting in turbines and a wind farm a few miles southwest of DeKalb? And
well, I've represented DeKalb County on and off under different maps for
I see.
For quite a while. So I know they famously had in DeKalb County, they had a county board meeting that lasted like 24 hours. It was open mic, arguing about a wind farm. All right, and eventually I believe the wind farm got built. But it was a big deal. This was more than 10 years ago, and so you have to be careful that the right distance away has to be looked at. A lot of people say I really like this wind turbine on my farm because I get all the money. But if you're the neighbor of that, you get all of the light pollution and the air pollution, and that the people are sitting there watching the sunset, and then they find that the blades of the wind turbine are going flicker, flicker, flicker on their windows, and they have to close their shades.
Interesting.
And so there are reasons that people should be able to have a say in what gets sited where.
Well, I'm so glad I asked you this because I'm glad I asked you this because this is exactly the kind of conversation that people need to. I wouldn't have thought of that. And because you are a good listener and you're paying attention, you're hearing both sides, and then you can help, hopefully, hammer out a reasonable path forward. I really like that. Somebody with a tongue-in-cheek, by the way, asked if they should bring a MAGA acquaintance to the science event so they can get some facts. With the few moments we have left, talk to me quickly about what we can do, if anything, to prevent NVIDIA chips, which, according to NVIDIA, are consumer grade, from going into Russian drones that, according to the New York Times, are now being completely run by AI and are capable of targeting people with the same kind of technology that when you want to prove you're a human, it says which vegetables must be put in your refrigerator. And you can put that in a drone and say, these are all things you can legitimately target. And it doesn't know that you can't put that you don't need to put apples in the refrigerator, or that apples aren't a vegetable necessarily. And it is shooting people without any human input. Give me a little bit of the benefit of your issue and advice.
This is an old debate. The one of the things I 10 years ago, if you just Google slaughter bots, the word slaughter bots, all one word.
All right.
You will see a 7-minute video that was produced 10 years ago by Stuart Russell, who's one of the heroes of artificial intelligence. He was not born in America. He is a Brit, but he is the one who literally wrote the textbook that everyone learns AI out of. Okay. And he works in America. He's a Stanford, Berkeley professor, and he's one of the real heroes of this. But he saw this danger coming 10 years ago and commissioned this video, Slaughterbots, and that is what is coming true today. In detail and it's a very scary video even 10 years ago, but he understood the technology. And, this is a really tough thing because when the story came out, I looked at the specification sheet for the NVIDIA chip that was being used, and it is something that is being sold for robots. Yeah, and so you've probably seen all these videos of the robot races the Chinese are having and everything else. According to NVIDIA,
it's being sold to students and for computer projects that they could do at home, and robot projects, and this was a quote in the New York Times, for beneficial purposes. And I'm just thinking, they need to hire some new PR. And what can we reasonably do? There was a New York Times investigative piece a few days before this one came out saying the Japanese are supplying high-tech chips by a smuggling route that apparently is an open secret to Russia. Japan, our ally, for at least as long as that lasts, until Trump does something to them, which he's already doing by canceling practice off South Korea. But let's just not even wander down that far. What can we do? What can we do?
All right. One of the problems is that these things being used in drones are not really the highest end chips that exist. All right. The progress is really fast. And for a long while, 10 years ago, it was possible to buy chips that were capable of doing facial recognition and identifying specific targets. The scary thing here is having this being used for assassination of specific people. That's what the Slaughterbots thing is. about.
Well, then they're cheap. They're not expensive anymore. They're cheap.
These are dual use. They're what's called dual use technologies. Unfortunately, they're cheap. These are the same things that are running commercial drones. There's slightly upgraded versions. They're the things that are running all the cameras that are recognizing license plates and stuff like this. And you can buy them from probably 5 different countries as commercial devices.
Okay, so what can we do? What can we do? What can we do?
This is, what we should have done 10 years ago.
Right, but I've got to say, I got to refocus you.
No.
Now it's 2026. Is there, and are we just doomed? What do we do?
Hold
on. I love your speech. We had to just delete that. You don't want to BS us, you just said. So, that's okay.
It's hard to get a physicist so angry that you have to bleep them out.
Yeah, you know what? Identify this sound?
Yep.
This is me patting myself on the back. Okay, go ahead. That I got you that angry. Go ahead.
All right. So the thing that we can do is the really scary things are what's happening with these high-end AI models escaping and hacking other systems.
Yes.
And trying to make copies of themselves and stuff like this.
Yes.
That is the scary thing, and that relies on chips that are state-of-the-art chips. And there's a bill that actually I'm the sort of spiritual father of. I think it ended up being passed out of the Senate from Tom Cotton.
Okay.
But it's called the Chip Security Act. And it is now in the Senate version of the NDAA, one of these must-pass bills. And I think it's going to be something that Trump has to sign. And what it does is it tells the companies manufacturing these that they have to be sure that there are mechanisms inside the chips that can prevent them from being abused by bad actors.
Okay, I got it. That's where we're going to have to leave it there. But the name of the bill is what if people want to contact their
representative? Security Act.
Chip Security Act. Even though Donald Trump just said, "Hey, I think we need to give the Chinese everything we've got," I'm going with you. You for my money, I'm going with you. Thank you so much, Congressman Bill Foster, Democrat of the 11th. You've just heard it. That's what you can do, or you can hide under your desk like we used to do for nuclear fallout. I'm Turi Ryder. It's Joan Esposito's show, live, local, and progressive.